In business today, three things to know. First, united against climate change at the UN, on the streets of New York City, and on Wall Street. We'll have coverage of the marchers, the protesters, and the countries planning to do something, but exactly what? Then, bankrupt in Ukraine. Forget the Russians. The Ukrainians' other big problem is massive debt and no way to pay for it. And empty shelves, accounting wrongdoing and declining sales threaten Tesco, one of the world's largest retailers. Arise Exchange for Monday starts now. Hello, everyone. I'm Andrew Schmertz. From world leaders at the United Nations to tens of thousands of marchers on the streets of New York City, climate change made its way to the top of the agenda at the United Nations General Assembly, even as the world debates how to handle ISIS, Ukraine, and Ebola. What is driving the conversation on the environment, and what are world leaders pledging to do about it? Our UN correspondent, Frank Ucciardo, has been covering the GA and joins us all this week to talk about it. Good afternoon, Frank.
Good afternoon, Andrew. There's a lot going on in New York City. It's not just the UN, it's the Clinton Global Initiative, and it's a lot to do about business and how it interacts with those factors that affect global warming and climate change. Many of the heads of state and business leaders who are in New York for the Climate Change Summit have also gone across town to the Clinton Global Initiative. Now there, they hope to find common ground on global issues affecting both businesses and climate change. Today at the Clinton Global Initiative, they featured a panel of business leaders and heads of state addressing the issue of climate change and economics. One of the goals of the Clinton conferences is to get pledges from big businesses to support developing countries that are most affected by climate change and also provide resources and funding for climate-friendly projects and industry. And to lead off New York City Climate Week, there were two massive demonstrations demanding action on the issue. First, there was Sunday's march downtown New York, actually down New York City's 6th Avenue, that attracted nearly 400,000 people. Then this morning downtown, thousands of protesters targeted Wall Street for another demonstration demanding that big companies and industry curb their emissions of greenhouse gases and stop trying to capitalize off the climate change initiatives. The UN Climate Summit that begins tomorrow, Tuesday, got a jump start with a couple of preview events designed to act as lightning rods for change. One of those featured UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who named Leonardo DiCaprio a UN Messenger of Peace.
To be bestowed this honor, to be able to speak and have a public forum representing a concerned citizen about such an incredibly important issue, like I said, is not only humbling, but I hope to serve this position well, and I look forward to speaking on Tuesday.
Leonardo DiCaprio will be joining President Obama and other dignitaries at the Climate Summit tomorrow. DiCaprio's speech will be in a conference room, not at the General Assembly. We want to make sure people understand that. It's not a huge official UN meeting.
He's not going to be addressing the whole General Assembly or the Security Council.
Exactly.
He's certainly playing the part of Messenger of Peace with the beard and the ponytail going there.
Yeah. It's a little peculiar, but you know, it's not unprecedented. I mean, Michael Douglas was a good example of that years ago.
And we should say that Leo has given a lot of money to various UN causes. Let's talk about what they're going to actually do, if anything, do you think? What action is going to come out of these conferences?
Well, you know, part of the problem with what they're trying to do is what has happened at the giant UN climate conferences, the official ones that go around the world, what they've had in Copenhagen, what they've had in Cancun, where they've had failures. And people kind of are looking at this and they're going, oh, well, all right, what's the point? And the point is they're hoping that this conference will point a finger towards what's going to happen in Paris next year, which is where everybody's going to try to hammer out binding legal agreements. And they're hoping that, okay, we're going to have some business leaders, we're going to have some global leaders, they're going to say, these are the actions we're going to take over the next 12 months.
It should be noted that all of these guys came and women came on their big, large jets with often one or two people on board. That certainly don't add to the climate situation. There's sort of this battle between the big industrialized nations like the United States and sort of smaller nations over how to handle climate change. One of the controversies and questions that come up is the U.S. spent all the 1900s polluting the world and now says, no, you can't do that even though you're still trying to emerge. What kind of battle is going on there?
It's an excellent point. And you know, it's one of the reasons where you have, it's not that the U.S., you have these other huge countries that are also big emitters of greenhouse gases, and some of them are saying, look, you want us to do this. Well, you know, we're going to try to help you, but again, it's really business that is, you know, we have smaller nations that are saying, look, you know, the waters are coming more and more onshore. We're losing a lot of the land around our small island nations because of global warming. The tides are rising. We're having more extreme weather, and we need help. So they're going to be asking big business leaders to step up to the plate and say, look, what can you do to help us in the future? What can you do with your industry to kind of mitigate a little of the things that you've been emitting over the past 10 years?
And I think it might be industry that ultimately leads this and not the individual nations. Frank Ucciardo, thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. Existing home sales slipped 1.8% in August. The fall blamed on investors who were buying up distressed properties and then pulling back a little bit. Sales fell to an annual rate of just over 5 million. Still, the August rate was the second best of the year. That drove down stocks on Wall Street, along with some concerns over China. Here's a look at the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down triple digits, 107.06 to 17,172. The S&P 500 down 16, and the NASDAQ, led in part by Yahoo, down 52.10. Taking a look at some of the stocks we're watching today. Clorox says it is shutting down all of its operations in Venezuela over restrictions by the government. The cleaning products company says it was forced to sell more than 2/3 of its products at fixed prices. Clorox trading up 666. And workers at 5 of Amazon's 9 logistics centers in Germany have walked off the job over wages. More than 2,000 employees joined the strike, the third this year by the workers who are fighting for a collective wage agreement in line with other retailers in Germany. Amazon down 682. And Chinese e-commerce site Alibaba now holds the record for the biggest initial public offering in the world, and not just in the United States, in raising $25 billion and surpassing the $200 billion market cap. However, Baba pulling back 4.5% today, down $4. And taking a look at commodities. Gold down 30 cents and oil pulling back another 89 cents to 91.52 a barrel. Ukraine may be worried that the Russians are coming, but they also fear the debt collector is on the way too. The Ukrainian economy is near collapse. Some key statistics, according to the website Business Insider. The GDP is down 5% and getting worse. Retail sales are at their lowest point since 2010, and the nation's currency is trading at record lows. So how can Ukraine pull itself out of this mess? Joining us now by phone is Ivan Eland, the director for Center on Peace and Liberty at the Independent Institute. We've had Ivan on numerous times talking about the situation in Ukraine. Often it's the political climate, but we have to remember the whole current political unrest between Russia and Ukraine sort of started over its economic crisis, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And it was also, you know, one manifestation of that crisis was that Ukraine wanted to become closer to the EU. And, of course, that caused all the problems with Russia because Russia wants to pull it the other way into its orbit. And, of course, the government fell, and now the government is more pro-EU. I think the Ukrainians are probably putting too many eggs in the EU basket. Certainly that can help with trade, et cetera. But the Ukrainians really have to do structural reforms on their economy if they're going to hope to have any, long-term economic renaissance. Because they're so much, as you point out, they're so heavily in debt, they're almost ready to default. And, their exports are down, the economy's down. They really have stagflation like in the 1970s. In the United States, only worse. Inflation high and a severe economic recession.
And people were asking exactly why did Russia want Ukraine? Because it's got a boatload of problems. What has sort of driven Ukraine into what is now looking like an economic abyss?
Well, I think, it's a lot of things. They have a lot of corruption there. They don't have free markets. Et cetera. And it's mostly the Ukrainians' fault. But, of course, Russia, the war in eastern Ukraine is not helping the situation and, of course, is making it much worse. So I would say that the Ukrainians have to bear a heavy responsibility for the economic culture they have of corruption, of restricted markets, kleptocracy, et cetera.
Okay, so now can you put in perspective exactly how big its debt is, and at what point does it begin to default?
Well, its debt is now 70% of GDP, and that's the key statistic, I think. That's the amount of debt and how much of an economy you have to support and pay that debt. And it's good, but it's going up to 77%. So it's headed in, in an increasing parabolic graph. So I think that's really the problem that they're having is, how do they pay this debt? It's really crushing. And a lot of other countries in Europe have had this, but the Ukraine really is not part of the EU and doesn't have a big crutch like the countries, Italy, Spain, Ireland, et cetera.
Yeah, there's no one there right now. There's no one there, Ivan, to really bail out Ukraine, right? I mean, what is it going to take to help the country? Is maybe the best solution for Ukraine to default?
Well, that may, of course, there are some people who say that. I don't think it's ever in your interest to default. But the other problem is if you don't, you may have, riots in your own streets because a lot of this, there are too many big government programs, et cetera, for, satisfying various constituencies. I mean, we've seen this in other countries as well. There's a cost of being socially and mostly fiscally responsible, and that is that you're going to cause domestic unrest. So, and of course, the likelihood of domestic unrest is even more that you have a war on, and people are either dissatisfied with the war or they're dissatisfied with the government in some other manner. So I think Ukraine is really hanging on the precipice here and about ready to fall off.
Okay, Ivan Eland, thank you so much as always.
Thank you.
Coming up, how it all went bad at the world's second largest retailer. You're watching Arise Exchange. Last week on Arise Exchange, will Janet Yellen spring any surprises on the markets when it comes to interest rates?
The market is worried that if they raise rates too soon, you might kill the recovery.
President Obama pledged to send 3,000 troops to West Africa to fight Ebola. Kanye West demanded all the fans attending a concert in Sydney stand.
I can't do the rest of the show until everybody stand up.
One was in a wheelchair. The other had a prosthetic leg. Watch this week for more. Arise Exchange.
I think that people in America do care about what happens throughout the world.
Global warming is probably something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
Somalia and the genocide there, and that's something people don't know about. They have no idea the brevity of that situation.
First thing I think about when I think of Africa is like war and famine and disease.
And right now with the tsunami that happened or the earthquakes in, Japan, we always look out for other people.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Welcome back to Arise Exchange. Time now for our business ticker. Stories making headlines across the nation and the world. To the front lines in the battle against Ebola. At the direction of the UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, the UN Mission for Ebola Emergency Response, or UNMEER, advanced team landed today in West Africa to combat the outbreak as the deadly virus continues to sweep across the continent or parts of West Africa. A soon-to-be released report from the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta estimates that the outbreak could infect up to 500,000 people by the end of January. And in the latest of auto recalls, General Motors adds more than 220,000 to its tally, this time for a defect in the parking brake that could cause a fire. The recall involves the Cadillac XTS from 2013 to 2015 and the Chevy Impala sedans model years 2014 and 2015. And Chrysler also announced a recall of more than 230,000 of its 2011 Jeep Grand Cherokees and Dodge Durangos in the U.S. due to a faulty fuel pump that could cause engines to stall. Both automakers report no injuries or accidents related to these defects. Turbulence increased at the Air France terminal today as the airline offered concessions that the pilots' union rejected, extending the weeks-long strike. The strike is costing Air France dearly, $25 million a day. Pilots have been protesting plans to expand the low cost of operations for Air France's Transavia unit by setting up foreign bases in a bid to fight back fierce competition from budget carriers. And there's a heated battle going on between Qatar and FIFA, the Soccer World Cup governing body, as to where the 2022 games will be played. A key FIFA executive committee member says he thinks the 2022 games will be moved because it is just too hot for athletes and fans in the 120-degree Fahrenheit temperatures of Qatar. Qatar says winter or summer, it's ready to host the most watched games in the world. Notice that FIFA did not talk about the alleged bribery scandal that allegedly got FIFA the games in the first time. Now, the highest grossing production in the world is The Lion King. The Disney musical has generated more at the box office than any entertainment medium, taking in $6.2 billion since its opening in 1997 and surpassing The Phantom of the Opera. To put it in perspective, the total makes The Lion King more valuable than Avatar, the highest grossing film in history, with nearly $2.8 billion worldwide. Hackers have recently damaged large retailers from the outside, but the world's second largest retailer, Tesco, is taking huge hits from within the company. In fact, Tesco has owned up to overstating its half-year profit guidance by more than $400 million. The company has launched an investigation into the accounting errors and in the meantime has suspended 4 of its executives. Brit Beemer is America's Research Group president. He joins us by phone. Lots of problems for Tesco, Brit. This is just the latest. This is, if you put it in perspective, it is really the Walmart, isn't it, of parts of Europe?
Well, it is, and even bigger than that, though, what you're seeing, Andrew, is that since this was actually driven by an internal whistleblower, the question is as more and more of these people can get more legal protection against what they're saying, I mean, this is going to be a much more common problem with retailers anywhere around the world or any business, because a whistleblower can see where something's that's being done improperly and report it, and send your entire company into a spiraling decline in stock value or sales value.
Yeah, its stock price today dropped dramatically by double digits. Are you saying that this is therefore more widespread? Because what you're suggesting is that we're going to hear more of these problems.
Well, you're going to hear more about them, but I think what's interesting is they already terminated or laid off 4 executives. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just one person that knew about it. And you've got to wonder, even though the president say he knew nothing, the question is if it's broader based than 4 executives, he may very well be a casualty if he knew nothing, because it all happened under his watch. I mean, ask Greg Steinhoffel formerly at Target what happens when you got a security breach of credit cards. You lose your job.
This is the second largest retailer in the world. So the question is, what has sort of caused Tesco to come up so short? It's not just this accounting scandal, which is now going to cost some jobs and put pressure on the stock. The company has not been performing. Well,
it's been underperforming. And as you know, it reminds you a little bit of Amazon. Amazon produces these huge revenue levels, but don't make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And this company's kind of the same way on the retail side. So, I mean, they've got to figure out a way to make money. And of course, that's what was so ironic about this situation. This was probably the most promising and profitable report that they put out in the last 5 or 6 years. So when this report came to be faulty based upon bad numbers, I mean, it really sent the stock into a spiral, which I think will continue on for many days.
Do you think this is just an error, or do you think we're going to be looking at possible criminal charges here?
You always hope it's an error. The amount is just so big. You wonder if it's $400 and some million or £250,000. You just have to wonder if how something that big got by that many people. Particularly, now they brought in all these outside accounting firms. What about your internal audit company? What about your internal auditing agencies? Why didn't they catch it?
And Brit, has anybody learned anything, therefore, from Arthur Andersen or from Enron? It is very hard to get away with these accounting irregularities today. And maybe this says that Europe needs to go a little bit further in some of its disclosure.
Well, I think it's a much bigger problem. But I think the American companies have now got probably some of the greater restrictions on them than even Europe. I mean, they obviously are going to have to look at this more. But I mean, this is the problem with publicly held companies, is the fact that if you're making major share decisions, buying decisions, selling decisions based upon the information they're providing you, if it's faulty, someday you're going to get some huge class action suit somehow that's going to really take these guys apart.
All right, Brit Beemer, president of America's Research Group. Thank you for your thoughts today. Ahead, a TV reporter's career goes to pot. All Our favorite person of the day is next here on Arise Exchange.
If I was building my own network, it would be for the people, by the people. It would be very diverse. It would be with every culture you can think of.
If I was to start my own news network, it would reflect positive and negative within the continents and the countries around the world.
I think that I would be more looking towards young people.
If I were to build my own news network, it would look like New York City. Old, young, fresh, hip, classic.
If I was to build my own news network, I would just have people from all over who are very connected and diverse.
If I was to build my own news network, my own world network, I would love a correspondent in every country, every location, every city. I mean, it's kind of unrealistic, but how cool would it be to get local stories from the impoverished country, the impoverished city that we don't know about?
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
Time for liquid lunch, things that make us want to drink. You could always order some shrooms to top your pizza, but now in Los Angeles, you can order pot with a pie. A new startup is offering marijuana-infused frozen pizza. It'll be available at a local marijuana dispensary. The company Pody's Pizza plans to infuse each 6-inch pizza with 250 milligrams of THC, the active ingredient in pot. The company also sells marijuana-laced tomato sauce. Each pizza costs $10. And that takes us to our favorite person of the day when we pick one person who grabbed your attention, and not for the right reasons. Today, it is a marijuana business owner / TV reporter who quit on the air so she can go full-time into her pot business. Well, you might as well go out in style, right? Charlo Green, a reporter for KTVA in Alaska, had just completed a story on a cannabis club when at the end she announced that she was actually the owner of the cannabis club and therefore she would quit, effective immediately saying, "Bleep it, I quit."
I'll be dedicating all of my energy toward fighting for freedom and fairness, which begins with legalizing marijuana here in Alaska. And as for this job, well, not that I have a choice, but I quit.
We apologize for that.
Spreading the message of freedom, and I'm going to start with marijuana. The station issued an apology and noted that Green had been fired. In November, voters in Alaska will decide whether to legalize marijuana. Let's hope for Green's sake they do, or her career will have gone to pot for no reason. And so Charlo Green is our favorite person of the day. You're watching Arise Exchange. We'll be right back.
Arise News is a different kind of network. We are able to tell our own stories, and we're able to cover stories in a way that other media outlets don't do. We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. Arise News is a place where we can tell stories in an interesting, factual, inclusive way like no one else in the business can.
Global. It's Monday, so it must be time for a new round of sanctions against Russia. Nigeria is open for business, and you are getting a handle on this situation. Compelling. Time for liquid lunch, things that make us want to drink. Could she have been separated at birth from, say, Grimace? All business.
Money's coming out of these countries, and that flow is part of what's driving the equity markets.
Entertaining money daily.
It's about reimagining.
Arise Exchange. Get this statistic. 1 in 3 Americans will be the victim of retail fraud this year, and this number is expected to rise. For retailers, the costs associated with fraud are equally devastating. According to a report by LexisNexis, retail fraud will increase by 10% alone Experts say fraud is up because more and more retailers are offering consumers mobile apps, and online e-commerce merchants experience the most fraud. Joining us now is Raphael Katz. He's a business attorney at Sadowski Fisher, and he specializes in retail fraud cases. Raphael, welcome to Arise Exchange. You know, this has really certainly changed the game. It used to be that retailers had to worry about shoplifters, basically. Now they could experience large-scale fraud without ever knowing it.
That's right. With the rise of online purchases and mobile apps, as you noticed, there have been these huge hacking controversies. We hear about Target. There was just Home Depot recently, and that's just increasing the amount of fraud that there is. With Home Depot, there was 56 million numbers that were actually stolen. Those credit card numbers were stolen, and then fraudulent purchases were then done from other retailers. There's also a huge legal effect on businesses like Target as well as the other retailers.
And who ultimately pays for this? I take it the stores have some insurance to protect themselves against it, but prices, when you buy something, must include some sort of number for potential fraud, just like you have insurance fraud in the auto industry, for example.
Right, and there's a fight over who can pay for it. You know, multiple class action suits came out of those Target breaches, and I assume will come out of the Home Depot breaches of those card numbers, where you have consumers who are filing class actions for invasion of privacy and the expenses they incurred, as well as financial institutions who are incurring all sorts of costs and fees.
As a lawyer, do you think that both state and federal law is a little bit behind the curve on enforcing the law, or is it simply that technology is always going to keep pace and stay ahead of the wrongdoers?
I think the latter. Technology always is one step ahead, and the law always catches up in interesting ways. And you have these class action cases that are catching up. I think you're going to see more as virtual currencies come across and Bitcoin. You're going to see the law catching up in all those areas.
And why are we seeing then just a rapid increase in fraud? I would think by now the retailers sort of know this is going on.
Well, I think the mobile app is one reason. More and more mobile purchases are happening, and the safeguards have not caught up there. You don't, for one thing, you go from cell phone to cell phone tower. It's a lot harder to do verifications. And
why haven't they moved to technology? I mean, is the answer technology, things like fingerprinting or retinal displays or something along those lines instead of just numbers and passwords?
Well, there are many credit card companies and retail companies have been moving to chips and installing chips in credit cards. They have been using geographical
it's required in Europe, right? I believe. Certain credit cards have to have chips in Europe.
And that's starting to be seen all over, as well as geographical verifications. See where the purchases happened, and that's helping as well.
Have they done a better job, let's say the credit card companies, of knowing your shopping patterns and knowing that if you're over here, you can't be buying something over here at the same time?
I think that even retailers are now doing that due diligence. I've heard cases about people seeing that there's been purchases all across the country. They've been looking on Facebook or Google and verifying the particularly big purchases.
From a legal perspective, one of the things that really shocks me is we hear about all of this, but we don't see any prosecutions.
Right. Well, I think the type of prosecutions that you're going to see in this area are really few. One is you're going to continue to see these class actions against the retailers for not safeguarding the numbers. You're also going to see actions against bad retailers, and that's another aspect of this as well.
What do you mean bad retailers?
Well, you have retailers committing fraud as well, both against the consumers and against the federal and state government.
And how are they committing fraud against the consumers? Are they taking credit card numbers and doing unproved channel?
Well, two things. You hear about the FTC starting to enforce against companies that are not giving what they say they are. There's increased chargebacks, which indicates the fraud. And then there are companies that are supposed to be monitoring the processing the credit card numbers, and they are not monitoring them properly with hurt to the consumer.
And finally, as an attorney, it's not just a big retailer problem, is it? It's the little guy on the street as well?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that you hear about everyday people and everyday retailers even, like florists who are being hurt by it. You can get the numbers from a breach in Home Depot or so, and then that credit card could be used against a small retailer who really will feel the pain.
And right, because when there's a chargeback against the retailer almost always loses on this transaction.
Right, and there are other fees associated with it.
That's right, anytime there's a chargeback. Okay, Raphael, thank you so much. It's a complicated issue and probably only going to get worse as technology on both sides tries to keep up.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Tomorrow on Arise Exchange, the world's largest summit on climate change kicks off at the United Nations. Heads of state from around the world will be in attendance. And of course, Arise is going to have continuous coverage all week from the UN General Assembly just up the street in Turtle Bay. Let's take a look at the markets once again. It was a tough day on Wall Street. Both the housing numbers and sort of things out of China really kind of pushing down the markets as China has announced that it's not going to increase its stimulus plan. The market down triple digits for the Dow, red for the S&P 500 and NASDAQ as well. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. We will see you tomorrow.